My name is Taylor, and I suppose if my parents were ever asked to describe me, they'd call me the responsible one. Not with affection, more like an obligation. I was the one who figured things out on my own, who paid bills on time, who kept quiet even when the room was full of noise. Responsibility is a strange currency in families like mine. It's never celebrated. It's expected. And it becomes your burden to carry everyone else's failure, especially if one of them refuses to grow up. In my family, that person is my brother, Ryan. Ryan is 32, though you'd never know it by how he lives. He floats job to job, couch to couch, excuse to excuse. He's a magician of misdirection. Every failed opportunity wasn't his fault. Every burned bridge was someone else's match. And for years, my parents helped hold the illusion together. They didn't just enable him, they built the stage he performed on. And I became the safety net, the one they could call at midnight, the one they could guilt. He just needs time, they'd say. You're lucky to have your life in order. So I built walls, quiet ones, polite ones. I visited less, answered calls with delays, and refused to get pulled into whatever spiral Ryan was free-falling through next. But boundaries don't mean much to people who believe they own your balance. I should have sensed it. The tension in my mother's unusually sweet tone, the way my father barely looked me in the eye, Ryan barely touching his food. There was a plan, and I was the last to know it. Dinner was a quiet war, the kind where smiles are weapons and silence becomes strategy. We sat around the familiar oak table in my parents' dining room, the scent of rosemary chicken and red wine pretending to soften the atmosphere. My mother, Linda, kept commenting on how rarely she saw me. My father, George, focused mostly on his plate, avoiding eye contact like guilt could be absorbed through potatoes. And Ryan was oddly quiet for someone who usually filled a room with noise and complaints. That should have been the giveaway. Still, I played along. I answered their small talk with short nods. I watched the charade unfold with the same calm I use when I know a storm's coming, but choose not to run. Then it happened. Linda set her fork down gently, folded her hands like she was about to deliver a prayer, and smiled with that honey syrupy sweetness she always used when asking for something she had no right to ask. So, sweetheart, she began, we've decided it would be best if Ryan stays with you for a little while, just until he gets back on his feet. There it was. George cleared his throat, as if to lend gravity to the absurdity. You've got that beautiful lakeside condo all to yourself. He just needs some space, somewhere stable, and you're doing so well. I didn't respond right away, because I'd learned that silence, when well placed, is louder than any objection. Ryan finally joined the performance. It's only temporary, he said, his tone rehearsed, and I can help around the condo, whatever you need. I almost laughed at that. Ryan didn't clean up after himself even when we were kids. But instead, I looked around the table at the three of them, waiting for me to nod, to cave, to carry, again. And then I did something different. I smiled. Of course, I said, quietly. If it'll help Ryan, I'm happy to offer him a place to stay. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Linda blinked, caught off guard. George exhaled. Ryan smirked like a man who thought he'd just won the game. But what none of them realized was that I wasn't playing anymore. They didn't know that the condo they spoke of no longer belonged to me. They didn't know that I'd already walked away. And they were about to learn that not every invitation is sincere. After that dinner, everything shifted externally. Nothing changed, but inside me, there was an eerie calm, the kind that only arrives when you finally decide that you don't owe anyone anything anymore. My family mistook my silence for agreement, for submission, for love expressed through obedience. But what they never understood was that love without respect becomes servitude, and I had no intention of serving their narrative anymore. That night, I returned home to the place they thought Ryan would soon occupy, my condo, the one by the lake's sunlight filtering through floor-length windows, furniture placed intentionally, everything calm, clean, mine. And yet, It no longer felt like my space, because it no longer was. Weeks before that dinner, I'd signed the final papers. The lakeside condo had been sold quietly, efficiently, without fanfare. I hadn't told anyone, not my parents, not my friends, certainly not Ryan. It was, in every way, a new chapter closing behind a locked door. Why I sold it, people might wonder. Maybe because I didn't want to be found anymore. Maybe because I was done building a life only to watch them treat it like an extension of their own. But if I'm honest, part of me hoped this would happen, that they'd try one more time to hijack my boundaries, and I'd finally have the means to show them the cost. And now, here we were. In the days following the dinner, Linda called twice. Once to ask if I needed help clearing space for Ryan. The second, to confirm they'd bring him over Saturday around 11. I played my part beautifully pleasant, composed, a daughter grateful to be of use. Ryan sent a single text. Thanks for stepping up. I'll try not to be a pain, lol. That lol might have been the most honest thing he's said in years. The days that followed were strangely peaceful. I went about my life, ran errands, met friends for brunch. I even took time to reread a book I'd left half-finished months ago. But beneath it all, there was a tension, like standing in the eye of a hurricane. I wasn't nervous, not at all, but anticipation hummed through me, like electricity, waiting for the flip of a switch. Saturday morning arrived. I made coffee, sat on the balcony of my new apartment, a quiet, sunlit space across town. Smaller, more modest, but entirely mine, with no footprints but my own. As I watched birds skim the lake's surface from a distance, my phone lit up. Unknown number. Straight to voicemail. Then again, another call. This time I picked up. Taylor? Linda's voice was tight, barely holding itself together. What is going on? I blinked, sipping my coffee. Good morning. What do you mean? We just got to the condo. There's someone else living here. The landlord says the place was sold weeks ago. Her voice cracked. I could hear George in the background, raising his voice at someone. And Ryan, he wasn't saying much, but I could make out his tone, confusion turning into panic. I leaned back in my chair, letting the moment stretch. Oh, I said gently. I must have forgotten to mention, I moved out a while ago, sold the place. You what? She hissed. I could almost see her gripping the phone like it might change the outcome. You told us Ryan could move in, she snapped. You let us plan everything. He has boxes in the trunk, Taylor. Well, that sounds inconvenient, I murmured, entirely unaffected. There was a long pause, the kind that usually came right before the guilt began. George's voice came next. Why didn't you tell us? Why wouldn't you? Because, I cut in, my voice sharper now. No one asked. And I stopped volunteering my life for your convenience a long time ago. I could hear Ryan now, his voice rising. Are you serious right now? You're gonna do this to me? After everything? You just let us show up like idiots? Everything? It was almost funny. The man who spent a decade evading responsibility was now acting like I owed him something simply because I didn't play along. I stood up, walked inside my new space, and glanced at the clock. It's not personal, I said calmly. I just figured you all would figure something out. You're grown adults. Surely you can find somewhere for Ryan to crash. Maybe a friend. A motel. That guy from the bar he's always crashing with. Taylor, this isn't funny. Linda's voice trembled. You've put us in a terrible situation. No, I said quietly. You put yourselves there. I was just the last one to stop pretending it was my job to fix it. I hung up. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. What I felt wasn't triumph. It was relief. Pure, unfiltered relief. Like stepping out of water I'd been drowning in my entire life. For hours afterward, I didn't hear a thing. I turned my phone off. I went for a walk. I smiled at strangers. I got groceries. And when I returned home, I found messages waiting, dozens of them. Missed calls from both parents. Texts from Ryan. You blindsided me. This isn't over. You think this is funny? And my personal favorite, you'll regret this. I didn't reply. Instead, I made dinner, poured wine, and watched the sky go soft and gold over the lake. They thought they had me cornered. They believed that my silence meant surrender. What they never realized was that silence can also be strategy. And I had just played the quietest checkmate of my life. It was nearly dusk when they showed up. I was sitting on the couch in my new place, feet tucked under me, a warm cup of tea in hand. The soft hum of lo-fi music filled the air. I hadn't even checked my phone in hours, no interest in hearing their reactions again. But then there was a knock at the door. At first, I froze not in fear, but in instinct. I knew. Before I even checked the peephole, I knew. It was them. And sure enough, there they were. Linda, George, and Ryan, standing outside my new apartment. And behind them, a car still running, trunk open, the back seat packed with boxes, duffel bags, and Ryan's entire disaster of a life crammed into cardboard. I took a moment, a single breath, then I opened the door. Linda stepped forward first, her hands out like she was appealing to my empathy before it ever had a chance to retreat. "Taylor," she said, her voice softer now, less sugar, more desperation. "We've been trying to call you. You found me," I said simply. George looked like he wanted to say something, but Ryan got there first. "What the hell, Taylor?" His eyes were already bloodshot, jaw clenched tight. "You said I could move in. We packed everything. We showed up. You showed up," I echoed. "But I never invited you here." His hands flew up in exasperation. "You know what we meant. You knew exactly what we were planning, and you didn't stop it. You let us think that it was still my condo," I finished for him. "That I'd just bend again like I always did." Linda cut in, stepping between us. "This isn't the time to make a point. Your brother has nowhere to go tonight. We're not asking for much, Taylor." "That's the problem," I said, not raising my voice but sharpening it. "You've never thought you were asking for much. Not when you expected me to bail Ryan out of rent, or let him borrow my car, or give up my weekends cleaning up after his messes. It was always small favors until I looked around and realized I was drowning in them." "You're being dramatic," George muttered. "We're family." "Exactly," I replied. "So why does it feel like I'm the only one who ever acted like it meant something?" Ryan took a step closer. "So what now? You're just going to slam the door in my face? Let your brother sleep in a car like some stray?" I studied him. His hoodie was wrinkled, his eyes darting angry, but uncertain. It was the first time in years I'd seen him without that smug entitlement holding him up, because now it wasn't working. His charm had no grip on me anymore. "You're not a stray, Ryan," I said, "but you are lost. And I'm not your map." That hit him. He actually stepped back, blinking. George finally raised his voice, his frustration cracking through. "This isn't right, Taylor. You told us you'd help him." "No," I said. "I told you I'd think about it. You assumed help meant sacrifice. Again. And you never asked what that meant for me." There was a silence then. It hovered, like mist before a storm. No one moved, and then Ryan lost it. "This is ridiculous," he barked, pushing past my parents. "You're not even a real sister. You're selfish. You've always acted like you're better than everyone, but you're not. You're just a cold, spiteful—" I didn't let him finish. I stepped back calmly, pulled out my phone and began to dial. "What are you doing?" Linda asked, voice rising. "Calling the police," I said. "What? Are you serious?" Ryan's voice cracked with a mix of fury and disbelief. I didn't look up from the screen. "You're trespassing. You came here uninvited. You refused to leave. And you're becoming aggressive. I don't feel safe." "You're overreacting," George began. "Am I?" I raised my eyes, locking onto his. "Because this is the first time in my life I'm drawing a boundary you can't ignore." Linda's face paled. She stepped toward me, her voice trembling. "Taylor, honey, please, don't do this. We're your parents." "I know," I said, voice steady. "And that's exactly why I am doing this." The call connected. I explained the situation, gave the address, and ended the call. For the first time, they realized I wasn't bluffing. Ryan looked stunned. George looked betrayed. Linda looked heartbroken. But I didn't waver. Minutes later, flashing lights painted the driveway. A cruiser pulled up, and from it stepped Officer Marcus, a tall, even-toned man with a clipboard in hand and a look that said he had no time for dramatics. He approached slowly, calmly. Evening. We received a call regarding a trespassing concern? I nodded. Yes, officer. I've asked these individuals to leave. They've refused. Marcus turned to them. Are you all family? Linda stepped forward. We're her parents. This is her brother. She's confused. We just wanted to move some things in. It's not her condo anymore. I cut in. For clarity. This is my apartment. I moved weeks ago. They tracked me down. I don't know how, but they aren't welcome here. Ryan opened his mouth to argue, but Marcus held up a hand. I don't need a backstory, the officer said, firm but calm. If she's asked you to leave, you're required to. That's the law. Linda's composure fractured. We raised her. We took care of her. She owes us. No, I said gently. I don't. Marcus took a deep breath, clearly used to this kind of thing. You can leave now, he said, looking at them, or I'll have to start filing paperwork. And I promise, no one wants that tonight. For a long moment they hesitated. Then, slowly, one by one they turned. Ryan muttered under his breath, carrying his bags back to the car. George followed silently. Linda lingered the longest, her eyes locked on mine, full of disbelief and wounded pride. I hope you're proud of yourself, she whispered. I didn't respond, because I was. Marcus stayed until they left the property completely, then nodded at me. If they come back, give us a call. You did the right thing. Thank you, officer. He left, and when the lights faded down the street, I closed the door, locked it, rested my back against it. The house was silent again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was mine. The morning after they showed up at my door, I woke to stillness. The kind that wasn't just physical, it was emotional, cellular, like my nervous system had finally been given permission to rest. I made coffee without bracing for a call. I stood barefoot in my kitchen and didn't feel the tug of obligation breathing down my neck. For the first time in years, the air felt clear. It didn't last long, of course. Before noon, my phone was a battlefield of missed calls and bitter voicemails. Linda had left 3, each more frantic than the last. The first was bewilderment. The second was guilt-laced disappointment. And the third, anger. She said I'd embarrassed the family, that I'd gone too far. George's was less direct, more silence than substance. Like he wanted to speak but still couldn't choose between loyalty and truth. And then there were Ryan's texts, pages of them, accusations, insults, shifts between wounded self-pity and barely veiled rage. Can't believe you'd do this to your own brother. You're selfish. Always have been. You've ruined everything. You think you're better than us? I didn't reply to a single one. Instead, I blocked them all. Not out of cruelty, but necessity. Because somewhere between that knock on my door and Officer Marcus watching them walk away, I realized something vital. Closure isn't about changing them. It's about choosing myself. That weekend, I spent hours reorganizing my apartment. It wasn't messy, but I wanted to leave no trace of that night. I wanted the space to feel like mine again, not a stage for confrontation, not a battlefield, just mine. I replaced the living room rug, bought new sheets, rearranged the bookshelf, planted lavender on the balcony. It was small, it was quiet, but it was peace. And that peace, I earned it. The following week passed in silence. I heard whispers through mutual friends. Linda had told relatives that I had lost my mind, that I'd become distant, difficult. George was concerned. Ryan, apparently, was back at their place, moping between job interviews that didn't exist. But the thing that surprised me most? I didn't care, not out of bitterness, Not because I didn't still carry the grief of being the child who was always expected to clean up the mess, but because I finally realized that grief was never mine to hold. I was grieving a version of family that never really existed, one where effort was mutual, where help wasn't demanded but offered, where love meant listening, not guilting. That family was fiction. What I had was a performance, one where I played the dependable daughter, the fixer, the fallback plan, one where Ryan never faced consequences, and my silence was mistaken for consent, and I had walked off stage. I got a letter 2 weeks later, yes, an actual handwritten letter from Linda. It arrived in a cream-colored envelope, her neat cursive scrawled across the front, like it might carry a softer message than her voicemails. Inside, she wrote about how disappointed they were in my behavior, how they'd always supported me, how they were hurt by how I'd treated Ryan. But not once did she ask how I was. Not once did she acknowledge why I made the choices I did. It wasn't a peace offering. It was a resume of their victimhood. I read it once, folded it carefully, and placed it in the recycling bin. Closure doesn't come when they say sorry. It comes when you stop needing them to. I started therapy again that month. Not because of the incident, honestly. That was just a symptom. But because I wanted to understand the girl I'd been for so long. The girl who said yes to everything to avoid being called difficult. The woman who equated boundaries with betrayal. My therapist, a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes and sharp questions, asked me early on, if you weren't the responsible one, who would you be? And I didn't know how to answer her, because I'd never had the chance to find out. But I'm learning now. I'm learning that silence can be power, but it can also be loneliness. I'm learning that self-worth isn't rooted in how much you give, but in how much you keep for yourself. I'm learning that sometimes, the only way to break a cycle is to walk away before you're spun back in. A month after the incident, I saw Ryan from a distance. He was at a gas station off the highway, standing beside their car, scrolling his phone. He didn't see me, and I didn't approach him. There was nothing left to say. Not out of hate, but out of freedom. We're strangers now. Not because of one night, but because I no longer recognize the version of me who kept saving him. And in that moment, watching him from a quiet distance, I finally understood. I didn't abandon my family. I stopped abandoning myself. These days, my condo is quiet in the best way. No guilt sitting in the corners. No one walking through the door expecting me to carry their weight. Just me, my plants, my books. A fridge stocked with things I actually want to eat. A couch that no longer feels like a waiting room for someone else's comfort. And every evening, as the sun slips behind the lake and paints the walls gold, I sit with a glass of wine, a flickering candle, and a sense of stillness I never thought I'd find. They don't call anymore. And that silence, it's the most beautiful thing they've ever given me. Story 2. I'm still not sure what the hell happened over the past month. For context, I'm Ryan, 30. I just came out of a 4-year relationship with a woman I thought I was going to marry. Her name's Tessa, 31. Or at least, that's how it was supposed to go before everything imploded like a bad Netflix drama. We met through mutual friends, clicked instantly. We were both obsessed with trail running, camping, and quiet Sunday mornings with coffee and podcasts. It just worked. For 4 years, it worked. 3 of those years, we lived together. We talked about rings, timelines, even dog names. I was planning to propose during Christmas, but around September, something in Tessa changed. It wasn't anything dramatic, just quieter, distracted, stressed in a way that felt more emotional than work-related. I asked a few times if everything was okay. Always the same answer, I'm just tired. I didn't push. I trusted her. Still do, to some extent. I never thought she'd cheat. Not once. But then came the weirdest twist of all. Her friend Zara messaged me out of the blue. Tessa and Zara work together. I've known Zara for as long as I've known Tessa, but we were never close. Zara's the kind of friend you say hey to at parties and never text. So when she DM'd me asking to meet up privately, I knew something was up. We met at a small coffee shop after work. I went in bracing myself for bad news. Zara didn't waste time. She told me Tessa had been confiding in her and was considering leaving me. Not because of someone else, she added quickly, but because Tessa was getting cold feet about marriage. Apparently, she wasn't sure she wanted to commit long term. I left that conversation feeling like someone had knocked the air out of me. Zara said she just didn't want me to be blindsided, claimed she was looking out for me. I didn't know what to do with that information. I wasn't angry, just stunned. That night, I went home and cooked Tessa's favorite dinner. I started planning more date nights. Bought flowers for no reason. You know, desperate stuff. Zara kept messaging me. At first, it was about how Tessa was feeling. Then, it turned into late-night texts like, "How are you holding up? And you deserve someone who's sure about you." I chalked it up to sympathy. A few weeks before Thanksgiving, Tessa dropped the bomb. She wanted a break. Said she needed a month alone to clear her head. Swore it wasn't about anyone else. Said she still loved me, but needed to make sure she wasn't just comfortable. She wanted to be sure it was love. It felt like a punch to the throat. I asked if this was about someone else. She said no. I asked why she couldn't just talk to me about all this without needing space. She said she needed to be away to know for sure. I told her, if she wasn't sure after 4 years, maybe we weren't meant to be. That turned into a full-blown fight. Within a few days, it was over. When the lease came up in December, we decided not to renew. She moved out. I stayed in the apartment alone. That first week was brutal. The silence was unbearable. I'd wake up and reach for her side of the bed before remembering she wasn't there. So, for New Year's, I threw a party. Just friends. I invited Zara too, partly because she'd been checking in, partly because I needed to be around people who wouldn't ask me how I was doing. The night went better than I expected. Drinks were flowing. Friends cracked jokes to lift the mood. Zara hung back after everyone left, offered to help clean up. That's the night we hooked up. It wasn't planned. Honestly, it just happened. I felt guilty as hell, but also relieved. Someone was there. Someone was listening. Since then, Zara started coming over more, watching movies, eating takeout, staying the night. I was still processing the breakup, but I couldn't deny that being around her kept me from spiraling. Then last Sunday morning, it all blew up. I woke up to loud knocking at my door. I opened it in sweats, and there stood Tessa furious. She looked me up and down, saw Zara behind me, and instantly went off. She accused me of cheating, said I'd moved on shockingly fast, called Zara a manipulative snake. She was shouting, tears in her eyes, voice shaking. I was stunned. I told her flat out, I didn't cheat. She's the one who broke up with me. She wanted space. I gave her space. She didn't let up, said Zara had gotten in her head. That Zara had suggested she take the break. That Zara was constantly planting doubts, asking her if she was sure about marrying me, telling her I'd freak out if she needed time alone. She said Zara manipulated her into breaking up with me, that Zara knew exactly how I'd react and used it to wedge herself in. Zara, who was standing behind me during all this, denied it. She claimed she was just the messenger, that everything she said to me came directly from Tessa. Nothing twisted, nothing strategic. But at that point, I didn't know what to believe. Tessa stormed out crying. I didn't follow her, just sat on the couch while Zara grabbed her things and left quietly. Now I'm sitting here trying to piece it all together, wondering if I was just a pawn in someone else's game. Was Zara really helping me? Or did she see a crack and wedge herself into it? Did Tessa leave because she had doubts, or because Zara fed her insecurities? And where does that leave me? After that Sunday meltdown, I didn't sleep much. My apartment felt like a war zone, like there was still smoke in the air, even though the explosion was over. I kept replaying what Tessa said, what Zara said, what I did, and none of it made sense. By Monday, Zara was texting me again, saying she wanted to explain everything. I ignored her at first. Then I realized I actually needed her version. In writing, not another emotional scene. So I asked her to text me everything. No calls, no meetups. I wanted to see her words. Unfiltered. No room for backpedaling. She sent a long message. According to her, Tessa had been confiding in her for months about her fears, mostly about marriage and what it would mean. She said Tessa told her that she grew up watching her parents' marriage fall apart, that she was scared she'd end up like her mom, dependent, miserable, stuck. Apparently, Tessa told Zara she felt like she had lost some control in our relationship, that I handled everything, our bills, her finances, most of our plans, that she relied on me too much and it scared her. Zara said she tried to be supportive, said she never told her to break up with me, only that maybe taking a little space could help her see things more clearly. And when Tessa mentioned wanting a break, Zara said she was just being a supportive friend. But then came the kicker. Zara admitted she told me about Tessa's doubts because she felt bad for me, that she didn't want me to get blindsided by a breakup I never saw coming. Was that kindness? Or was she just trying to wedge herself in early? She ended her message with, "You deserve someone who sees you clearly. I hope you realize what we have is something real." I didn't reply. Instead, I texted Tessa, one message a day, just asking if we could talk. No pressure, just talk. For a week, nothing. Not even a read receipt. Then Friday afternoon, I got a reply. "I'll come by tomorrow. We need to talk." I spent that night deep cleaning my apartment, like I was preparing for Judgment Day. She came around 2 p.m. the next day. Same face I loved, but visibly worn down. She looked exhausted, emotionally drained. She sat on the far end of the couch like I might bite. We made some small talk. "How've you been?" "Fine." "You look tired." "Yeah." That kind of thing. I started to apologize, but she held up her hand. "I wrote some stuff down," she said. "Please let me say it before you ask anything." She pulled out this small notebook, pages folded, scribbled in pen. She had notes. I sat back and listened. She told me she did love me, deeply. But after we started talking about marriage seriously, she panicked. Not because of me, but because of the weight of what it meant. Her parents' marriage had messed her up more than she realized. Her mom passed away during the pandemic, and in those final years, she watched her parents scream at each other daily. Her mom was completely dependent on her dad financially, emotionally, everything. Tessa swore she'd never end up like that. And then, somewhere in the middle of us building a life together, she started to see echoes. I handled the rent, the bills, the long-term planning. At her request, yeah, but it still made her feel like she wasn't in control of her own life. She said she couldn't even explain why it hit her so hard, but it did. She admitted she should have talked to me first, but she didn't want to make it real, so she vented to Zara. Thought it would pass. It didn't. Zara, according to Tessa, didn't say anything obviously manipulative at first, just asked a lot of questions. "Are you sure you want to marry Ryan? Do you think you'd feel more independent if you had your own space for a while?" Stuff like that. Eventually, Zara told her about a cousin who took a month away from her fiancé and came back so much clearer. Tessa latched onto that story like it was a lifeline, she said when she asked me for that break, and I said no. She freaked out. Interpreted it as control, not fear. And that's why she walked away. She said she regretted it the second she moved into her new place. Said she couldn't even sleep there alone for the first week. Her best friend ended up staying with her. Then she heard from one of our mutual friends that I had a New Year's party, that Zara had been there, and everything clicked in the worst possible way. She told me she assumed Zara had been scheming the entire time, encouraging the breakup, just so she could move in on me the second she had the chance. And then, when she saw Zara in my apartment, it confirmed everything in her head. She told me, "I felt like I'd been played by both of you." I didn't interrupt her. I let her finish every word. When she was done, she looked up and asked quietly, "Did you and Zara?" I nodded, only once. "After the party. It wasn't planned. I was wrecked. I didn't know what the hell was going on. She nodded, slowly. I could see the pain on her face, but also some kind of relief. Maybe just from finally getting everything out. She asked to see my messages with Zara, so I handed her my phone. She scrolled silently for a few minutes, then put it down. She was playing both sides, she whispered, telling me one thing you another. She sat in silence for a bit, then, looking at the floor, said, "Do you still want this? Us?" I didn't hesitate. Yes. I never stopped. She exhaled half a laugh, half a sob. "Okay, but I have some conditions." "Fair." First, she wanted me to block Zara everywhere. No contact, no exceptions. Done. Didn't even blink. Second, she said she'd already signed up for individual therapy to deal with her childhood trauma and codependency stuff. But if we were serious about rebuilding, she wanted us to start couples therapy too. Also fine. Honestly, it was overdue. Third, and this one made us both laugh. She said, if I ever made a "we were on a break" joke, she'd punch me in the face. Non-negotiable. It was the first time in weeks I saw her smile. We ordered takeout that night. Watched old episodes of some cooking show we used to binge. It wasn't like everything went back to normal. There was still a ton of hurt hanging in the air, but it felt like a real step forward. By morning, she asked me if I'd be open to moving into her new place, instead of having her move back in here. Said she wanted a fresh start somewhere that didn't carry all the weight of what happened. It wasn't a great apartment, tiny, awkward layout, kind of a sketchy block, but I told her we could talk about it. Whatever made her feel safe. That afternoon, she went to grab a few things from her place for the week, and I just sat in the quiet and realized how close I came to losing someone I loved because we were both hurting and couldn't say it out loud. I know I messed up. I should have seen the red flags earlier. Should have pressed harder when she started pulling away. Should have told her about Zara's message immediately. But I didn't. I was scared. I reacted instead of communicating. And now I'm just hoping we can rebuild something better from the pieces. I didn't expect things to be fixed overnight. Even after we talked, even after she stayed over, there was still a heaviness between us. Like we were both walking around the wreckage of something we built, trying to figure out what could still be salvaged. Tessa was quiet the next few days. Not cold, just cautious. I didn't blame her. After everything that happened, I think we were both scared to trust how we felt. Like maybe it would all collapse again if we moved too fast. She started therapy first. I could tell it was hard on her. Some nights, she'd come over, eyes a little puffy, voice a little soft. She didn't always want to talk, and I didn't push. We'd just sit together, watch something dumb, make pasta, share silence that didn't need to be filled. A few weeks later, we found a couples counselor. First session was rough. She cried. I cried. We didn't say anything groundbreaking, we just said the truth. Stuff we should have said months ago. She told me how small she felt sometimes. How scared she was of becoming dependent on someone again. How she didn't know how to say it without sounding ungrateful. I told her how confused and helpless I felt when she pulled away. How scared I was to lose her. How I tried to hold on tighter, thinking that would help, but probably just made her feel more trapped. We were basically in a race to take the most blame, but somehow it felt like progress. The counselor said something that stuck with me. You both weren't trying to hurt each other. You were trying to protect yourselves. And damn, if that didn't hit hard. Meanwhile, Zara kept trying to reach out. She texted, called, sent me these weird guilt-trippy messages like, I thought we had something special and I was just trying to be your friend. At one point, she even emailed me a wall of text explaining her side. I didn't read most of it. Tessa blocked her everywhere. I followed her lead. I didn't respond to a single message. But then, about 2 weeks after we started therapy, Zara took it to a new level. She started posting old photos of me and her. Not nudes or anything, but ones that were clearly meant to stir the pot. One of me cooking while she leaned on the counter. One of us sitting on the couch together, stuff from the week after Tessa moved out. Tessa saw them. Of course she did. She didn't yell or cry. She just went quiet. That silence scared me more than anything else. She didn't say much that night, but the next day, she filed a complaint with HR at work, told them about Zara's behavior, about the weird messages, the harassment, the Instagram posts. I stayed out of it, but a week later, Tessa was transferred to a different department and promoted, weirdly enough. Zara went radio silent after that. I assume she got warned or something. We never heard from her again. Things slowly got better after that. Not magically, there were still awkward moments, lingering doubts. But we kept going. We kept trying. And that meant something. Tessa started taking more control over her finances. I used to manage most of it at her request, but now we sat down together once a week and went through everything. She even started using a budgeting app, Baby Steps. We decided not to move into her apartment. It just didn't feel like ours. Too many ghosts. Instead, we broke the lease on her place, paid the penalty, and stayed in the old apartment for a while longer. Then in May, we bought a small house just outside the city. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, tiny backyard, old wooden floors that creak like they're telling secrets. But it was ours. We planted herbs in the window, put a hammock out back, started fresh. Therapy helped. A lot. We both had to unlearn some patterns. She had to realize she didn't have to be alone to be independent. I had to stop trying to fix everything just because I hated seeing her struggle. One of the most important things we learned: just because someone needs help doesn't mean they want a rescuer. Sometimes they just want a teammate. I stopped hovering. She stopped hiding her doubts. It was awkward at first, but eventually, it became normal. About a year after everything blew up, we got married. Small ceremony at my dad's country club. Close friends. Immediate family. Tessa wore a dress that looked like it belonged in a vintage film reel. She glowed. Like all the weight she'd been carrying finally fell off her shoulders. We danced barefoot under string lights. Laughed more than we cried. The DJ messed up our first dance song and we just shrugged and rolled with it. I didn't make a speech. Didn't need to. I looked at her and she knew. We went on our honeymoon the week after. Somewhere quiet, no phones, no socials, just ocean and books and naps under palm trees. It felt like breathing for the first time in months. And when we came home, we didn't talk about Zara. Not even once. It's not that we pretended it didn't happen. It's that we chose not to give her any more space in our lives. She wanted to break something. She didn't. She failed. Tessa and I weren't perfect after that. We argued. We had bad days. We still do. But we never stopped choosing each other, even when it was hard, even when we were scared. And now, we're okay. Actually, we're more than okay. We're real. Because this version of us, this messier, honest, battle-tested version, isn't built on comfort or fantasy. It's built on hard truths, deep love, and a hell of a lot of work. Some people call what happened a rough patch. Others would say we dodged a bullet. But me? I think we got a second chance most people don't get. And this time, we're not wasting it. Story 3. You ever reach a point where you look at someone you've loved your entire life and just feel nothing? That moment came for me when my 7-year-old daughter, Mia, clung to her father's neck in our living room and screamed, "Bad mommy! I hate you. If you divorce daddy, I'm staying with him forever. You'll be alone." She meant it too. I had heard similar words before from the same mouth, same angry little voice, in another lifetime. Back then, I fought like hell for her. I gave up everything in the divorce to keep custody. I told myself that one day, she'd understand. That all the tears, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices would eventually mean something to her. They never did. She grew up resenting me. And the final nail in the coffin? Her wedding day. She invited her father's mistress on stage, thanked her for rescuing her dad from a broken marriage, and called her mom. Me? I was in the audience. A ghost. A footnote. Then I opened my eyes and found myself looking at her tiny face again, 7 years old, full of rage and righteousness. The past had come back. This was my second chance, but I didn't feel the same. You don't want me? I asked her coldly. Fine. I don't want you either. Jason, my soon-to-be ex, stared at me like I'd slapped him. What the hell, Ava? Don't talk like that in front of her. I looked straight at Mia, hiding behind him with her arms wrapped around his waist. She doesn't want to stay with me, and I won't force her. Mia blinked, stunned. Then she started wailing louder. Bad, Mommy. I hate you. Jason crouched to console her. She's just upset, honey. Mommy's just tired. She carried you for 9 months. Of course she loves you. Mia looked up at me, waiting for confirmation. I said nothing. Jason turned to me, eyes sharp. You want a divorce? And now you don't even want your child? What kind of mother does that? I shrugged. Didn't she say she didn't want me first? I'm respecting her decision. Mia's voice cracked. If you cared, you wouldn't leave. You want to make me a kid without a family. In our last life, I said gently, your dad had someone else. That's why I left. But you never saw that. You thought I just wasn't good enough. She stared at me like I was dirt. Maybe you weren't. Daddy wouldn't cheat if you were like my friend's mom. Her dad never cheats. Those words gutted me once. Not this time. Back then, I held on to her anyway, kept loving her, kept trying, hoped that one day she'd see what I did for her. But she never did. Not until it was too late. This time, no more begging for crumbs of affection from someone who only saw my flaws. Later that day, I drafted a new divorce agreement. One where Jason got nothing, no company shares, no money, and definitely no pity. If Mia chose to stay with him, fine. I wasn't fighting for someone who made it clear where she stood. My mom called while I was revising the documents. Did the divorce go through? Not yet, I replied. Working on a better version. You're not giving up the company again just to keep Mia, are you? Not this time. If she wants to go back to the Chambers family, she can. I'm done sacrificing everything for people who don't see my worth. I meant it. 3 days later, I drove across state lines to an orphanage. There was a girl there. Her name was Lila. In my past life, when I was sick and alone at 46, she was the only person who cared. A scholarship kid I had once sponsored. She bathed me, fed me, sat by my bedside and read to me. She said, without your help, I wouldn't have made it through school. Let me repay you. My own daughter never said anything close to that. So yeah, I was serious about adopting Lila. She's out at a math competition, the director told me. Then she handed me a photo. Lila was thin but bright-eyed, her smile hesitant. My heart tightened just looking at her. If you're really serious, the director added, I'll call you when she's back. She's a little older than most adoptable kids, but sweet. I don't mind. On the drive home, I stopped by a mall and picked out clothes in Mia's old size. I didn't know Lila's exact measurements yet, so I guessed. I still remembered what styles Mia used to like. That was a mistake, because in the middle of the children's boutique, I spotted them Jason, Mia, and Wendy, his mistress, holding hands, laughing, playing happy family. Jason had one of Mia's hands. Wendy had the other. They froze when they saw me. Guilt flickered across Jason's face, then faded. I walked past them without a word. Jason had the nerve to stop me outside. Mia's been thinking about you, he said. Why haven't you picked her up? I looked down at her. She glanced up at me, hesitated, and then hid behind Wendy. Is that what you call missing me? I asked flatly. Jason frowned. You're seriously still holding a grudge against a child? I held up the shopping bags. She'll love the gifts, he added quickly. Come on, you bought them for her, right? No, I said. They're not for her. Mia's eyes widened. She looked shocked. For once, I didn't budge. Jason tried again. You're her mother. You don't just stop loving your child. I didn't respond. Instead, I turned to Mia. Even if I did buy these for you, what would it matter? You made it clear. You don't want me. Mia's voice wobbled. I'll forgive you. If you don't talk about divorce anymore and let me see Aunt Wendy. I raised an eyebrow. Forgive me? For what? She blinked. unsure. These aren't for you, I repeated, so don't flatter yourself. She burst into tears. Jason exploded. You're heartless, Wendy chimed in, acting the peacemaker. You shouldn't make her cry. She's just a child. I said nothing. That luxury brand pony toy in my hand, the one Mia wanted, only someone with 7 figures in annual VIP purchases could even order it. I'd bought it for Lila. An hour later, the store called. Miss Ava, the clerk said, your husband and daughter tried to use your VIP card to buy the same crystal pony toy. Should we allow it? No, I said. And don't ever allow it again. In the background, I could hear Mia crying, Wendy sputtering, and Jason trying to argue. It felt like closure. A few days later, the director called. Lila was back from her math competition. If I still wanted to adopt her, the paperwork was ready. I brought new stationery, toys, and a school bag filled with notebooks and competition prep books. I remembered from my last life how she used to say she envied kids who had new school bags and books of their own. When I gave her the gift, she touched it gently, then looked up at me with shy, glowing eyes. Thank you. I love it. That night, I tucked her into her new room in my apartment. Good night, Lila, I said. She hugged me tightly. Good night, Mom. And just like that, the hole inside me didn't feel so big anymore. Summer passed like a quiet dream. Lila and I became inseparable. I brought her to work most days, where she'd sit with a stack of practice books at the corner table while I handled meetings and reviewed contracts. My staff got used to seeing her around. Some of them even brought her snacks or little puzzles. She never asked for anything, always polite, always grateful. It was peaceful, easy even. The thing is, when you've spent years clawing for affection that never came, you start to forget what love is supposed to feel like. I didn't realize how exhausting it had been trying to earn Mia's love, defending myself to Jason, carrying a home where no one really saw me. Lila changed that. She wasn't loud or demanding, but she noticed things. If I looked tired, she'd quietly bring me tea. If I forgot to eat lunch, she'd nudge a sandwich my way. She wasn't trying to impress me. That's just who she was. One night, after brushing her teeth and getting into her pajamas, she climbed into my bed with her little blanket. Can I sleep here tonight? She asked. I nodded and pulled the covers over her. She pressed her cheek to my shoulder. I'm really happy you came to find me. I'm really happy you let me. I didn't cry, but for the first time in a long time, I felt something like peace. That peace didn't last. 1 week before school started, I got a call from the principal's office. Apparently, Lila and Mia were enrolled in the same school. Different grades, different floors. I hadn't thought it would be an issue, but apparently it already was. There's been an incident, the voice on the phone said. We need you to come in. By the time I reached the school, I could hear shouting from outside the main office. Mia's voice. You little thief. That pony was mine. My mom bought it for me. You don't even have a mom. Why would anyone buy you anything? I didn't steal anything, Lila said quietly. Oh, really? Then how come you have the exact same crystal pony? Huh? You think you're better than me now? You're nothing. You're a nobody. I stepped inside. Both girls froze when they saw me. Mom, they both said, almost in unison, but only one of them made my heart move. I walked straight past Mia and put my arm around Lila. I'm here, I said gently. Let's get this sorted out. Turns out Mia had seen the pony in Lila's backpack and lost it. She didn't believe someone like Lila could possibly own something so exclusive. She assumed Lila stole it. Never mind that I had bought it. That Mia had seen it in my hands the day she rejected me at the mall. The school reviewed the footage. They found no theft, no wrongdoing, just a child who lashed out because she couldn't believe she wasn't the center of someone's world anymore. I made a formal request for Mia to issue a public apology at Monday assembly. The principal agreed. So did the teachers. When we got home that night, Lila crawled into bed again and wrapped her little arms around me. I'm sorry I caused trouble, she whispered. You didn't, I said. You just existed. That's not trouble. I'll be really good, she said softly. So you won't regret choosing me. My chest tightened. I will never regret choosing you. She fell asleep with her hand resting on my heart. 2 days later, my lawyer called. The divorce settlement is finalized, he said. You can come in to sign. I brought Lila with me. Jason, Mia, and his mother were already there, sitting across the table. Wendy wasn't present, probably too embarrassed after all the public posts and fake smiles they'd broadcast online. They looked rough. Jason's shirt was wrinkled. Mia's braids were messy and uneven. His mom looked like she hadn't slept in days. I heard they'd been kicked out of the villa after I disabled the household staff's payment accounts. Without maids or drivers, their perfect world crumbled fast. I can't believe you're doing this, Jason muttered as I walked in. Throwing your own daughter away. I didn't respond. Instead, I handed my ID and documents to the notary and calmly signed my name. Jason hesitated, but he had no real choice. My lawyer had collected enough evidence of his affair and financial misuse to burn down his reputation if he refused. When it was over, I stood, ready to leave. That's when I felt a tug at my sleeve. It was Mia. Her voice cracked. Mom, please, let me stay with you. I know I messed up. I'll be good. Just don't leave me behind. My chest tightened. For a second, I almost faltered. I remembered all those nights carrying her to bed, patching up scraped knees, singing lullabies while she snuggled up in my arms. Then I remembered how she looked me in the eye and said I wasn't good enough to be loved. I looked at Lila, standing quietly beside me, holding her new math workbook. I already have a daughter, I said gently, and she's right here. Mia's face crumpled. Jason's mom grabbed her by the arm, hissing, You pathetic little brat. She doesn't want you anymore. Can't you see that? Mia burst into tears as the sound of slaps and scolding echoed down the hall. I didn't turn around. A few months passed. Mia stopped going to school. I heard through the grapevine that Wendy had given birth to a baby boy. Jason's mother shifted all her affection to him. Mia, once the center of their world, became a nuisance. Unwanted. An extra mouth to feed. The irony didn't escape me. Lila, on the other hand, was thriving. She came home one day with a certificate for winning first place in a regional math competition. I took her out for ice cream. She picked pistachio. I picked mango. We walked along the riverbank, laughing about a pigeon that kept following us like it wanted a scoop. Life was quieter now, simpler, full of the kind of small joys I'd forgotten how to notice. One evening, years later, my assistant buzzed in with a call. There's a woman in the lobby. She says her name is Mia, says she's your daughter. My hand froze on the pen. She's asking why you never wanted her, he added. I looked out the window at the skyline, the same one I used to stare at while rocking Mia to sleep, wondering if I was enough, wondering if she'd ever see me. She's not my daughter, I said quietly. Not anymore. And I hung up. Years went by. I didn't keep track of Jason's life, but news still found its way to me. They said Wendy left one night, packed a small bag, took what little money they had left, and disappeared. Rumor was she couldn't handle the stress anymore raising 2 kids. One disabled, one spiraling. The perfect family act had cracked beyond repair. Jason was fired from his job soon after. Too many absences, too many excuses. He started working at construction sites, then odd jobs. Eventually, people just stopped calling him back. Mia, well, she dropped out of school before finishing middle school. Started hanging around older boys, got into trouble. One day, she ran away, stole what little money they had left her sick baby brother alone in a locked room. He ended up with a permanent disability from the high fever. Jason's mother suffered a stroke not long after. No one came to visit her in the hospital. The same people who once said I was the problem, who painted me as cold, bitter, unforgiving, were now nowhere to be found. Karma doesn't always come quickly, but it comes. As for me, I kept going. Lila graduated with top honors, earned a scholarship to a university overseas. Mathematics, of course. She traveled the world for lectures and research forums. Every time she gave a talk, she sent me a photo of the crowd, always with a little note. Wish you were here. When she came home, we'd go for long walks, just the two of us. No fancy restaurants, no expensive gifts, just peace. Just time. That was always enough for both of us. I had handed my company over to a team of professionals. These days, I mostly traveled with Lila, sometimes staying behind in different cities while she taught, gave interviews, or worked on research. She liked that I always had snacks in my bag. I liked that she always remembered to bring an extra scarf in case I got cold. We had a rhythm, a quiet, loving rhythm, one that required no effort to keep alive. Then one rainy afternoon, my assistant buzzed my phone again. "She's back," he said softly. "The girl from before. Mia." I didn't answer right away. "She's not here to fight," he added. "She said. She wants to understand." I sighed. "Let her up." When she stepped into the room, I barely recognized her. Her face was tired, skin sallow, eyes guarded but hollow. She wore an old hoodie, sleeves fraying, shoes soaked through from the rain. She looked like someone who had walked a very long way without knowing the destination. "I didn't come to beg," she said. "Didn't expect you to." She shifted in place. "I just wanted to know. Why? Why didn't you take me back?" I studied her for a long time. "Because I already did," I said quietly. "What?" "I gave you everything. My love, my home, my strength. I gave you my heart and asked for nothing but a little kindness in return. And you threw it all away over and over again." She swallowed. "I was a kid." "No," I said gently. "You were a child who made choices, and those choices had consequences. I never asked you to be perfect. I just wanted you to see me, but all you saw was what I lacked." Tears welled up in her eyes. I thought, maybe if I had done things differently. "But you didn't." Silence stretched between us. Not angry, just final. She nodded, wiped her face. "I understand. I hope you do," I said, "because the world won't keep offering second chances." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Is she happy? The girl you adopted?" I smiled faintly. "She is. And she made me happy, too." Mia nodded, then walked out without looking back. Some stories don't end with hugs and redemption arcs. Sometimes they just end, and that's okay. Closure doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it's just the quiet knowing that you did your best, and that it wasn't your job to fix what others refused to see. A few months later, Lila was invited to speak at an international symposium in Italy. I joined her, of course. We stayed in a small seaside villa with white shutters and rosemary growing in the garden. One evening after dinner, she poured me a cup of tea and sat beside me on the porch. "You ever think about her?" she asked softly. "Mia?" "Yeah, sometimes," I said, not in anger, not in regret, just as a part of the past. Lila nodded slowly. "You chose me. I don't take that lightly. And I don't regret it." She leaned her head against my shoulder. "Thank you for not letting my story end in an orphanage. Thank you for not letting mine end in bitterness." We sat there for a while, watching the sea stretch out into the fading light. Somewhere far beyond the horizon, all the mistakes and pain and what-ifs drifted away. And in that moment, all that remained was peace. Just peace.